The story begins with a crashed car and someone asks whether or not they should save their boss. He's performing CPR, but he's unsure if he actually wants her to come back to life. This is because she made him work under the 996 schedule. Basically, you work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. And that's why, watching her die, he wonders if what happened to her is just karma accumulating. He starts to lift her but wonders if at least helping her now might earn him some good virtues. He moves toward her sweet lips when suddenly a golden light descends from the heavens and enters the woman. The protagonist complains that if she dies, he won't know who to demand his labor rights from. At the same time, he says he never imagined her lips would be so soft and sweet. At that moment, she opens her eyes. The protagonist is blushing as she asks if he's looking to die. A system message appears, stating that he successfully startled the Empress and has earned the ability of divine appearance and a golden shield with 31 uses. The protagonist doesn't know where this system voice is coming from as a leg approaches him. It looked like he was going to get kicked, but instead he's being tortured in a cruel manner. He resolves it with jujitsu and starts running from this dangerous boss. She then says he'll have to face divine punishment. The protagonist is confused and asks what's going on. He tries to explain to her that she just fainted because she hit her head and asks what she thinks she's doing. Lin finds it strange that she can't use her true energy. Being crushed in a cruel way, our boy says she better go to the hospital, especially since the ambulance won't arrive quickly. He still needed to return to work, but it would be nice if she paid extra for everything he'd done. However, Lin is staring at her hand, confused, not knowing where she is or why it seems all her energy has disappeared. Some time passes, and we are at the protagonist's home. He was arriving from a tiring day at work and wanted the rest. As soon as he enters, he finds his chubby friend in his natural habitat and asks if there's any food left. However, the friend only asks if he was drained by the evil boss. But suddenly, his friend seems startled and drops the can he's holding. The protagonist, confused, asks what the problem is. The boss had entered the house and asked if this cage was what he called an apartment. The protagonist wants to know what she's doing there, while the chubby friend says he should give notice before bringing a girl over. However, the boss is confused and says that if he's not careful, he'll suffer divine punishment. The friend is also confused when suddenly she grabs Louis's hand and tells him to come along. Seeing that she's covered in blood with torn clothes, the friend assumes they're engaging in some forbidden fun. Outside, our boy tells her that despite being her subordinate, she can't keep cutting into his rest time. However, Lin says that based on what he's said, he seems to be her disciple. She explains that she's an empress from the underworld who cultivated for over 3,000 years to ascend to the realm of humans and gods. And that's why she wants to know where they are and why she can't use her innate energy. Louis is confused, wondering if she's crazy. However, he's not normal either and mentions that since Earth's emergence, he's heard of some cultivators. But that's extremely rare, and as far as he knows, the two of them are just normal people. However, she reaches out, seemingly trying to strangle him. He begs her to calm down. Lin approaches and says he doesn't seem to emit the aura of the Justice Alliance. Our boy distances himself again from this crazy woman. But behind the trees, 3 suspicious men are discussing whether she's the right person. One of them says they need to make sure this looks like a robbery. However, Lin says she noticed someone listening in on their conversation and declares they deserve divine punishment. The 3 productive members of society emerge, saying they didn't expect to be discovered so easily. As soon as our boy sees energy in one of their hands, he wonders why cultivators want to take him down. The guy says it's a pity, but the young man saw things he shouldn't have and lunges at him, telling him to go to hell. However, that's when the golden shield he had received activates. The men are thrown against the tree and wonder how this is possible. The system appears again, saying that because he caused damage, he will receive some beginner cultivation packs. Yui is confused by these voices, and Lin says she'll have to teach her disciples never to let an enemy escape alive and that she will finish off these insects. She kicks her leg upward, making the man disappear, and says that sometimes physical strength is enough. Meanwhile, Yui realizes he has indeed received the little system. Moreover, it seems connected to the strange woman in front of him, who we sure is not Miss Lin. Back at home, his friend decides to leave the apartment to him for the night and go sleep at an internet cafe, but he warns Yui to keep quiet to avoid getting scolded. The friend says he can't believe Yui brought this woman home, and Yui is thinking the same thing. He then tells her to come in and make herself comfortable and apologizes for the mess. She sits down saying she doesn't care about trivial things even though her disciples tend to be strict. Yui goes to the fridge and asks her what this business is about being an empress who crossed worlds. If this is truly possession, then what happened to Lin Mia's body? She explains that she was in the middle of a tribulation to evolve when she got caught in a battle with the Justice Alliance. Suddenly, in the midst of the fight, she ended up here powerless. Yui says she's constantly mentioning this alliance and asks if, by chance, they are enemies. The Empress responds that those guys are a bunch of hypocrites pretending to be righteous, but are utterly disgusting, and since they want to fight her, they deserve to be turned into a river of blood. Yui, standing by the fridge, thinks this woman sounds more like a terrorist. He then gives her a glass of water to drink. She tells him to take a look at how this world works. He explains that in his world there are things like magic and extremely advanced technology. The boss watches some Lolitas performing magic. She seems impressed by the power until Yui shows her spaceships blowing up planets. He warns her to be careful because there are people in this world who could destroy her and the entire planet with a flick of a finger. Staring at the images, she asks if that's really possible. He confirms it, saying she needs to understand that personal cultivation won't stand a chance against these forces. That's why she should never harm anyone, or the consequences could be very serious. She suddenly stands up and says the energy in his world seems very scarce. She places her hand on his forehead and says that the boy's aptitude is one of the best she's ever encountered. Yui suspects it must be something related to that system. Lin explains that if he were in her world in 300 years, he would reach an extremely high realm. Suddenly, his phone rings. He answers it while thinking all he ever wanted in life was to be an ordinary worker and make a little money. It turns out to be one of his colleagues saying that if the bugs aren't fixed by tonight, he doesn't even need to show up at the office tomorrow. Frustrated, Yu says he's not an artificial intelligence that doesn't need rest. Even Lin comments that working so late is no different from slavery. She mentions that in her world, once a bridge repairman did something similar, so she cut him into pieces. Yui is confused because she mentioned it so naturally. She then says that for something as simple as that, she was called a murderer, which doesn't make any sense to her. Turning around with a smile, she says it doesn't matter because those guys can't defeat her. Yu thinks to himself that she doesn't seem like such a bad person. He says she's at least a dystopian warrior, someone who fights for what's right. He then asks if her phone is still working because it's essential for daily life. She reaches into her pocket and questions if it's really that important since she doesn't feel anything magical about it. She hands him the device, asking if that's what he means. The protagonist says that this expensive phone is really good because after the car accident, it's still intact. Yin grabs her wrist, saying that now he'll show her how to use it. He takes her fingerprint, touches the screen, and explains that this is how you unlock a phone. However, Lin turns red, calling him a pervert who needs to be punished. In the next scene, a delivery arrives for him. The boss asks why the air smells so spicy. He invites her to eat some meat with him, and she watches curiously. She puts a piece in her mouth, gets startled, and says it's much less dangerous than she imagined. She comments that the meat feels like a dragon's breath. She asks if people really eat something like this, and he asks if they don't have anything similar in her world. She explains that they do use spices there, but nothing as spicy as this. He smiles and says it's amazing how different civilizations can be. He picks up what seems to be a Coke and says that even though it looks like poison, it'll help with the flavor, and it's quite tasty. He takes a sip to show it's not poison, and she drinks after him. However, she seems not to like it, leaning back and saying it gave her a strange sensation in her mouth and a tingling in her stomach. He warns her to be careful because if she drinks it all at once, she'll burp. Apparently, she burped. She says it has a bitter and sweet taste at the same time, which is very good. She imagines her disciples warning her about poison, but she replies that they shouldn't be afraid because this poison will only temper her body. By temper, she doesn't mean to grow stronger, and the disciples are all happy. He asks if it's really that good. She explains she was just reminiscing about some good stories from the sect. As he's about to put the food away, she grabs his arm, saying he doesn't need to worry because she'll develop tolerance. Yui warns her to be careful because toxins can accumulate. Excited, she says that an empress can't be afraid of something so simple. She takes another bite, but in the next scene, she's claiming it's not that spicy after all. A while later, in her peculiar way, she asks what his favorite drink is. Meanwhile, he's telling her to stop being stubborn. His phone rings again and he answers it. Obviously, it's another scolding from his boss, asking why he hasn't fixed the bugs yet. The boss warns that if it's not done by tomorrow morning, he might as well never return. But Yui is confident since this guy answers to Miss Lin. He looks over and sees her. Even though the soul isn't the same, the body is. The scene shifts to the next day. Yui explains how everything works in a world. She responds that she already understands the elevator is a kind of staircase that moves on its own. The protagonist praises her and reminds her that everyone will call her Boss Lin. She assures him she understands and tells him not to worry. However, as the elevator doors open, a blonde guy walks in complaining that Xiao Kiki is so cruel. He approaches her and says she heard about the accident but is glad to see she's doing so well. He offers her the special breakfast he made just for her. At that moment, she turns to Yui and asks who this person is. He explains it's a guy and who's shown him her former suitor. He's the son of the building's owner, and everyone thinks he's an idiot. The blonde guy turns to Yui and tells him that next time he'd better leave her alone in the elevator since someone as smelly as him shouldn't be near her. But he's completely ignored as Yui suggests they hurry to the office. A chubby guy comes running saying it's good that the boss has finally arrived. He advises her to fire Yui because yesterday he didn't finish the work and only badmouthed her. Yui leans into Lin's ear and tells her it was this guy who kept calling him in the middle of the night. Lin turns to the man and says that, as far as she knows, the one ruining her reputation is him. The man, embarrassed, says he would never do such a thing and insists Yui must have lied to her. She then says that she spent the whole night with Yui, so she knows very well who's lying. The blonde guy is utterly confused by this situation. The protagonist realizes she just poured gasoline on the fire, but the system detects that he shocks some nearby people and grants him a few martial arts skills. The scene shifts to the president's office. Yui tells her not to worry because getting Fudaslodgen won't be difficult for him. As soon as he accesses it, he'll know exactly where she lives and then she can go home. However, the Empress asks why he's helping so much. As far as she knows, the previous owner of the body wasn't very kind to him. Yui replies that he's a good young man who loves helping others, but in reality he knows that if he commands the Empress, he'll basically be an emperor. Plus, it'll be great to see that chubby guy get what he deserves. And finally, he can't abandon her to die after what happened yesterday. She remembers being attacked and asks what this business about dying is, but Yui completely ignores her and says the food the blonde guy brought is really good. He brings over the dish and asks if she wants some more. However, she remembers yesterday's spicy food and says that red dish must be too fiery. She rolls to the side, refusing to eat it. Sometime later, they leave the room and the chubby guy is holding 3 buckets, asking if he hasn't been punished enough. But she responds that he should already be happy to be alive. If he complains one more time, he'll earn 10 more hours on the clock. Shannon then approaches and asks why Yui was in her office. He warns her to be careful because that guy is poor, unrefined, and stinky. The Empress glares at him. Shannon apologizes, wondering why she's giving him that look. Yui again thanks her, saying that breakfast was delicious. He walks away with the boss, saying they have private matters to handle. Shannon obviously wants to know what those matters are. Yui remembers that he needs to shock people to earn system bonuses, while Shoman thinks Yui will have to pay for what he's doing. The scene shifts to a luxurious neighborhood at the Shanshu mansion. Yui compliments the Empress, saying she's getting the hang of using a phone. The door opens and she says adapting to the new world comes naturally to her. Upon entering, the protagonist comments that the house is as luxurious as he expected. He talks about the kitchen appliances and says he'll teach her how to use them later, but she says there's no need since she's never cooked in her life. He then shows her the bathroom, and she remarks how strange it is to do all hygienic tasks in the same place. He explains how to use the toilet, shows her the shower, and she says she'll take a bath. She tells him to fetch some clothes as she's sure the body's previous owner must have left some behind. As soon as Yui opens the wardrobe, he sees the hanging clothes. He remarks that he didn't expect the former boss to be this kind of person. He picks out some clothes, thinking at least he doesn't have to worry about whether they'll fit since it's the right person. Meanwhile, the Empress is in the bath, asking if he's prepared everything because she's about to catch a cold. Yui's concern, however, is something else. How is he going to teach her to wear modern clothes? He hands them to her and tells her to look at pictures and not put them on the wrong way. She retorts that he should stop nagging because she's not that dumb. Despite the questionable design, the only thing she finds strange is that this string is considered clothing. Meanwhile, Yui is in the living room watching TV. He calls her to watch a historical documentary. He plans to explain everything about human evolution and the creation industries. She sits beside him, saying she's curious. However, some time passes and she's already asleep. The protagonist gets annoyed that she claimed to be interested but didn't last 10 minutes. He goes to cover her with a blanket, but she seems to sense that something slashes at it. Staying the blanket tear, he's confused, especially since she's still asleep. Slowly, he moves a sheet of paper closer to her, and she slashes at it again. He is shocked that she has such a sharp alert system even while sleeping. He decides to move farther away since it seems a bit dangerous while she's asleep. He sits down and starts checking out the items he received from the system. Then he begins practicing one of the fist techniques he obtained. The name Heavenly Fist of Dal sounded very pretentious. He assumes a few combat stances and feels as though his body is burning. His chest tightens and his heart feels and it's about to explode. She approaches him and says that if he continues at this pace, he'll eventually die. She doesn't know exactly what he's doing, but the better the technique, the riskier it is. Even though he has talent, his foundation is very weak, which just stresses her out. Essentially, he's too weak. The poor guy feels crushed. She says that now that she's had a little nap, she's full of energy. Yui was about to comment on her attacks when his phone rings. It's one of the bosses asking for help with some company files. The protagonist responds that he had taken Miss Lin home and would return to help soon. He tells her he'll try to come back at night, and she asks why he doesn't just stay by her side to help with the tedious tasks. However, he says that with great power comes great responsibility, and he needs to ensure the company doesn't fall into chaos. He then heads to the door, saying there's no reason to make life harder when she's calm, but she tells him to stop and comes closer. He's about to ask why when she steps even closer. Yui asks if this isn't a little inappropriate. She flicks his forehead and tells him to forget it and leave. The poor guy is left confused. Before closing the door, though, he says he'll order some deliveries for her, but asks her not to scare people. She reflects that now, without innate energy, she can't transmit her consciousness anymore. The protagonist has worked all day and it's finally time to go home. The Saitama of the office calls him president and suggests he treat everyone to dinner. The boy asks what this president thing's all about. Saitama jokes that they all know he's close to President Lin. Yui tells them to stop exaggerating. He explains to everyone that she had a car accident and he just happened to be nearby and helped her. If he really had something going on with her, he wouldn't be stuck there doing overtime. Nearby, Xiaoman overhears everything. He thinks this explains it all. It was just a coincidence. There's no way a loser like him could get close to Miss Lin. Back at the mansion, we see the president when someone asks why the lights are off. The Empress turns with anger and says he'll have to face the consequences. However, the protagonist sensibly places food on the table and asks what's wrong. She freezes for a second before devouring everything, commenting that he should have brought it earlier. Shortly after, she's calmer and says that food without spice feels a bit bland. He tosses the leftovers in the trash, muttering that it's really hard to understand her. Lin then shows him her phone and says this thing must have something against her. She tried to order food with 2 taps, so why doesn't it work for her? He sits down and takes a look, showing her that she needs to scan her face to make a payment. While she's fiddling with the phone, he cleans the table, explaining that this is how money transfers work in this world. While tidying up, he notices some sheets of paper with meditation techniques written on them. He asks Lin if she can read that sort of thing, but the Empress reveals that she's the one who wrote it. He's shocked, and she remarks that of course she still knows how to use paper and a pen. The meditation technique integrates the body, energy, essence, and soul. It would help him grow strong enough to start learning some techniques. The boy feels embarrassed. He never imagined she'd go to such lengths for him. However, she winks and says there are conditions for him to accept her method. He has to practice the way she dictates. That's because natural talent alone isn't enough. He'll have 3 weeks to master the first chapter or he'll disappear because she doesn't keep lazy people around. Now he's trembling and awkwardly asks how long it usually takes disciples to master this. She says it's normally 4 weeks, but since he's talented, it won't be a problem for him. He starts reading a few pages about energy and pulse. It's about the circulation of energy rhythm returning to its true nature. Meanwhile, she wants a bite of something sweet and refreshing she's eating. She tells him he should eat first before practicing, but Yui is already spitting blue fire, saying he feels like his body has become lighter. The Empress is impressed that you mastered the first technique in just a few breaths. Even he's confused, asking if he really mastered it, but the Empress, now sitting on the counter, tells him that being able to gather energy proves he has. She tells him to breathe again and try to accumulate power. The boy looks like a vacuum, pulling in all the energy from the environment. Yuichi gets startled, asking what kind of monster he is. For impressing the Empress once again, he receives the instant step ability. He starts to think that every time he impresses her, her expectations will rise, making it harder and harder. As much as she was a good sheep, there's a limit to how much wool he can shear. She asks why he's laughing, and he replies that it's nothing. Then he asks if she has any other instructions because he wants to get back to practicing. She says yes and mentions they have a very important problem. He asks what it is, and she wants to know why there's no Coke in the house. The poor guy is confused. Later, he says teaching her to use delivery apps at this moment is dangerous, but she's already drinking her Coke, saying she feels amazing. As he's leaving, she says there's something else she needs to remind him of. He should be more cautious because she's seen countless prodigies fall due to arrogance. He must always remember that there are mountains beyond mountains. But in the middle of her lecture, she suddenly starts hiccuping uncontrollably. She covers her mouth and says this body is strangely fragile. He leaves, saying you warned her not to drink so quickly. She tells him to disappear or she'll finish him off. He responds that she should know that if she keeps drinking that, she'll get diabetes and cavities. The Empress asks if she shouldn't drink it and he slams the door, saying it's better not to. With that, she relaxes, saying she finally has a little peace. But from outside, he shouts, reminding her not to forget that his number is first on the contact list. The Empress reflects that in her past world, everyone feared her. It's been a long time since she had someone care about her this much. Yui's back home, wondering where his brother has gone. He decides to flop on the couch since the day was exhausting and opens up that little game his. He checks the group chat with his friends who are talking about getting a good score. Yui asks to play, but suddenly everyone claims to have stomach aches and wants to leave. Apparently, Yui is one of those players who sinks the team, which is why no one wants to play with him. But someone called Old Maniacs says he'll be in town soon and asks if Yui wants to grab a meal tomorrow. Yui accepts and gets all excited. He reflects that he's been playing with Old Maniac for 3 or 4 years, but has never met him in person. Meanwhile, in his surveillance room, someone comments that they disappeared into a strange neighborhood. A bald guy says they went there to investigate, but there were no remains of the bodies. Another person replies not to worry because they already found a way to deal with that child. The next day, Yui is messaging his friend saying he's waiting for him to arrive, all while thinking about the food he ordered. Then someone approaches. Is it Old Maniac? What's going on? Has the game flipped? Are girls now pretending to be old men? Yui tells the young woman that the table is already reserved. He starts to think she works for the bar and comments on how competitive the beverage market has become. But then she smiles and says she is Old Maniac. She shows their chat history, startling Yui. Feeling awkward, he asks if she's sure, pointing out that her voice sounds very different. The girl explains that people think she's very gullible and easily tricked, which is why she prefers to pretend to be an old man online. She says the one who introduced her was someone named Ling Ji, her sister. Yui comments that now it makes sense why he sometimes heard a woman's voice on Old Maniac's microphone. Feeling awkward, she asks him to stop calling her that and says her name is Xiao Tu, and she'll be living in this city for a while. Later, By a lake, he asks if she isn't afraid of him since she came alone. She says he's overthinking because she feels safe, having trained since childhood. She's confident she could handle 3 or 5 guys on her own. Our boy says he understands, but he's still not used to the fact that his online friend turned out to be such a beautiful girl. She gets flustered, asking if he's talking about her, and starts lightly hitting a wall, telling him not to say such things without thinking. However, the girl is so strong that she causes the structure to collapse. She rushes to save him, and he thinks that dying like this wouldn't be so bad. And with that, she falls right on top of him. How many ribs broke? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of his ribs. She apologizes, explaining that she has a special physique with superhuman strength and dense bones. She never imagined that falling on him would cause so much damage. Our boy prepares a technique and tells her to calm down, assuring her he can handle it. He reflects that it's a good thing he practiced those techniques, or he would have definitely died. Then her phone buzzes with a message, and she says her first request has finally arrived. She shows him an app called Xiaxiang and asks if he's familiar with it. He asks if it's the app where you can post missions for cultivators and warriors to do lover. After completing the mission, they earn the offered reward and accumulate hero points. She confirms and says her ultimate dream is to become the greatest heroine of all. She then shows him the mission, which is to take down someone who stole another man's girlfriend. She shows him the phone and he says a bastard like that deserves to die. But then she asks why the target looks so much like him. Without hesitation, she almost slashes his head off. He dodges and tells her to calm down, insisting he never do something like that. But she ignores him and says since it's her first mission, she can't fail, so he better stop dodging. She goes for a kick, but he sidesteps and asks why she's trying to kill her friend like this. Motivated, she just tells him to stop dodging and turn into the hero point she needs. He dodges again and she seems puzzled by how he's always avoiding her attacks. The protagonist thinks that in his life, no woman ever comes easy, but since she wants to do things this way, he won't hold back. He uses instant step to appear behind her and prepares to use the Dao fist, almost bowling her away. She realizes she made a mistake trying to kill this guy. With that, she gets scared, and he earns the Soul Shock technique. This ability stuns the opponent, making them obey him for a while. Xiao Chu says her grandfather always told her that China has many hidden dragons, and now she sees there's no way she can defeat him. Yui tries to comfort her, saying not to worry because he's also been training since childhood. He says he only won because he caught her off guard, but she says she doesn't believe that, pointing out that the way he dodged her attacks was strange. She says she'll need to check him out, and he asks what she means by that. She starts poking his body, saying that if he's been training since childhood, there should be some marks. She lifts his shirt, telling him not to resist because he doesn't have a choice. Later, she asks what's going on because he's only been practicing for 3 months. He admits he thought the abilities he learned were special but never imagined they'd be this powerful. Of course, we know he's only been practicing for 3 days, but he decides not to tell her that. Xiao Chu says with such talent, she can't wait to see what her grandfather thinks of him. Yui asks if she can figure out who is trying to kill him and assures her that she can trust he believes in true love and would never be disloyal. She says it's not possible to directly see who sent it, but she can try to set up a meeting. The scene shifts to a van parked on the street with some men stepping out. A guy with gold earrings asks if the girl managed to complete her mission. Xiao Chu says yes and he can do whatever he wants with the boy. Meanwhile, our protagonist finds it odd since he's never seen these people before. The man congratulates Xiao Chu, saying she'll get 5-star review. At that moment, Yu asks the man if he's made a mistake since they've never met, but the man asks if Yu has already forgotten him after using him. Then he orders his men to take Yu down. 2 more guys show up carrying something suspicious. The man with the earrings says that today they'll take everything from the boy. One of them says he's handsome, so they'll enjoy doing whatever they want with him. Yui quickly realizes that either these people are acting in bad faith or they're being manipulated. He decides this is the perfect moment to use the technique he just acquired. He activates the Soul Shock technique and orders them to find out who sent the mission and deal with him instead. Xiao Chu asks if he's just going to let those people go. He replies that for now, it's the best solution. On the way home, she says she wanted to spend more time with him today, but unfortunately, she's getting calls and needs to leave. The protagonist says since she'll be staying in the city for a while, they can meet again later. She waves goodbyes, saying they'll see each other soon. He watches as she gets scolded by her sister, wondering what his other friends will think when they find out the old maniac is a girl. Just then, he gets a call on his phone and remarks that she's finally learned to use the device. He answers and jokes that if she's been kidnapped, she should cuff twice. But the Empress responds that using a communication artifact is easy for her. She boldly states that she wants him to accompany her to buy some clothes. In the next frame, they already arrive at the store and Yui is handing money to the taxi driver for the trouble Lin caused. When he suggested they stop a taxi, she kicked one of them, saying she was just following his instructions. He sighs and says whatever, then asks why she suddenly wants to buy so many clothes. She replies that she doesn't feel like wearing someone else's clothes forever. The store clerk asks if he's there to buy clothes for his girlfriend. Yui knows this is a sales tactic to charge more later and clarifies that he's just there to carry her bags. Some guys nearby comment that it's impossible for someone like him to be dating a beauty like her. The clerk brings out a light dress, saying she'll love it, and then shows a Gucci jacket, claiming it never goes out of style. She asks Yui what the clerk is talking about. He explains that each outfit in his world is suited for different situations. She nods, saying she understands, and then asks if they have any tight latex outfits. The clerk looks awkward and asks what she's talking about. Confused, she looks at Yui and says she saw on his computer that he always searches for that kind of thing. Embarrassed, Yui tries to explain to the clerk that she means a superhero style, something strong looking. That's why she mentioned latex. But the Empress said she only thought of wearing it because she assumed it was trendy since he always looked at it. But apparently, he doesn't want her to try it on. The nosy guys nearby are trying to figure out the relationship between the bag carrier and her. Meanwhile, Yui asks the clerk to bring something more appropriate. She agrees and the Empress goes to change. She comes back wearing the outfit. The clerk immediately compliments her, saying she looks stunning. The Empress says it's similar to what she used to wear in her world, asks Yui what he thinks. The clerk explains it's from their vintage collection. She comments that she wanted something more classic and thinks it looks perfect. The Empress stands in front of the mirror and decides to buy it. Then she points to Yui, saying she'll pick something for him too. He's confused about why, but in the next scene we see the protagonist looking almost exactly the same. No major changes. However, the Empress, who seems to grow more confident by the minute, tells Yui that he looks quite stylish. He asks why she insisted on buying something for him too. She explains that the Lin family sent a message about a banquet in a few days. She makes the payment and says she thought it would be a good opportunity to learn more about this world. That's why she invited him to accompany her here, but then the cashier says her account doesn't have enough balance. Yui finds this odd considering the Lin family account should have unlimited funds. He then offers to pay for it himself. He knows he'll need to live frugally for 2 months, but he feels it's worth it. Except the total came to 38,000 and the boy is devastated. Later, she's trying another drink and comments that it's bland compared to Coke. Yui tells her he checked her account and noticed a large transfer to a public account. To resolve it, they could contact manager Zheng, but she says she's not particularly worried about money. He explains that money is quite valuable and questions if she truly doesn't care. She replies that if he's so concerned from now on, he'll manage her money. He's confused and asks how he's supposed to make his own money. That's when she says that all the money she has will also be his. He's immediately overjoyed considering her wealth, but realizes this means it'll belong to her from this moment on and can never escape. Blushing, he says he understands but adds that there are still a few things to clarify. Suddenly, she looks to the side and remarks that those people had disappeared, apparently, and they were sharper than she expected. He mentions that he also felt like someone was watching him earlier but thought it was just his imagination. She acknowledges his sharp instincts and tells him he can handle it if he wants. Meanwhile, in an alley, a bald man angrily asks why their plan is being cancelled when it was almost complete. A man with brown hair says the boy was supposed to be eliminated because he witnessed Lin's car accident, but since she's alive, there's no reason to kill him anymore. The bald man, furious, asks if they won't avenge the 3 brothers they lost. The bespectacled man beside him says that issue will be dealt with sooner or later. Later, at the company, a man hands over some papers, saying Miss Lin made some payments. Once those payments are reimbursed, they'll have the money. The only catch is that the new contract requires a fresh signature, and he asks if Yui can handle it. The problem is that Yui isn't great with numbers. He remembers that the Empress said her money belongs to him now. He wishes that were true since it would make his life easier for the next 10 years. He tells the man to hand over the papers, and the man agrees, but that he piles on another stack and then another, explaining that these are for upcoming contracts. The chubby man offers to help, commenting that there are indeed a lot of them, but Yui doesn't want to be tricked and decides it's better to handle it himself. He asks if he just needs to compare the orders in the system. The man confirms and leaves, saying to call if he needs help. Outside, Shonen asks how it went. The man responds that Yui doesn't trust him. The two laugh oddly, saying that's perfect. If the chubby guy had handled the files, he could have been blamed for any errors. But now that Yui is doing everything alone, he'll be only one held accountable, especially since he doesn't realize the lists on his desk are all wrong. Obviously, it'll take him forever, and he'll still mess everything up. Shonen praises the man, saying he did a great job turning the tables. The chubby guy comments that since the company is going through a tough time if Yui makes mistakes, they'll definitely be fired. Even if the president wants to keep him around, they can convene a shareholder meeting and he'll inevitably be expelled. The blonde man says that as soon as they release the explicit video they recorded of Yui, he'll be ruined. But then the secretary appears, saying there's a group of people who want to talk to him. The men from the alley arrive, holding something dangerous in their hands. The secretary asks if he knows them. He says yes, so there's no need to worry, and he tells her not to interfere or call the police no matter what happens. She reassures him that she'll keep the secret. Shonen approaches the men and tells him to talk upstairs. Meanwhile, the secretary wonders what they're planning. As soon as the door closes, she hears a lot of strange noises. Shonen is shouting, saying that it won't fit in the space. The secretary thinks he might be in danger but remembers he told her not to interrupt. Suddenly, a moan is heard from the room, and she comments to herself that the rich really know how to have fun. Back to Yui, the poor guy is exhausted. Nothing is adding up and the system's data seems wrong. He decides to recalculate, convinced this time it'll work. Just then, his phone rings. It's the Empress, scolding him and demanding to know why he hasn't come home yet with food. Feeling awkward, he asks why she didn't just order deliveries since it'll take him a while. But she warns him he has 1 minute to be at the door or he'll get a beating. The scene shifts to a restaurant. The Empress comments that the food in this world isn't bad at all. Yui asks if she wants to try some pork intestine noodles. She immediately refuses, so he questions why she hasn't mastered the delivery app yet, or maybe she has and just wanted to eat with him. Out of nowhere, she chokes but quickly changes her expression, claiming there were too many options on the app so she couldn't decide. He says he understands and she sits down asking how work was today. He explains that he was reviewing some financial papers but nothing was working out. She suggests it might have been a lack of focus, but he insists manager Zhang must have messed something up. He smiles and says they should eat first since the food is delicious. Suddenly, a bald man at a nearby table shouts that he's sure this isn't pork intestine. Yui is startled, wondering why the man didn't mention this earlier. The Empress looks confused. Yui watches as the restaurant manager approaches, asks the bald man why he's shouting. The man insists that this clearly isn't intestine. The manager tells him to stop defaming the restaurant without evidence. The Empress asks Yui where he's going as the bald man threatens to shut the place down. That's when Yui steps in, places a hand on the man's shoulder, and asks the manager if the bald man's claim is true. He picks up the troublemaker and warns that he'll need compensation for spending his money there. The manager denies any wrongdoing, but Yui, trying to get a confession, says the food tasted odd and threatens to beat the man if he doesn't come clean. Finally, the cook admits that the intestines are made from fermented beans. Naturally, everyone demands their money back. When Yui sits back down, the Empress remarks that in her kingdom, the manager would face divine punishment. But she finishes her meal and says at least her order tasted good, so they'll let it slide. The protagonist pieces things together, realizing that Zhang might be substituting genuine products with something cheap to deceive him. The next day, Yui is back at the office. Zhang approaches and asks if he finished the documents. Yui replies that he has already sent them to the investors. Suddenly, Zhang exclaims that this is terrible news. He apologizes, claiming he made a mistake. He forgot to update the supplier list and used old pricing. He shouts for everyone to hear that if Yui signed and sent those documents, the company will lose millions. Some other employees join in, saying this will impact the entire company. Shaman shows up, asking what mistake Yui made this time. However, it seems Shaman had a rough night. He's visibly in pain, clutching his lower back. Zhang asks if he's okay. Our boy just smiles, saying he's curious about all this commotion. Shannon then says that because of Yui's mistake, no one in the company will get their bonus this month. The rest of the employees get angry, saying they were counting on that bonus. The blonde man says that since Yui is now the president's representative, he'll have to explain this to everyone. Yui then reveals that all the contracts had been sent with the correct prices, so there's nothing to worry about. Shannon looks confused by this no-problem claim. Yui shares the numbers, telling them to take a look. When Zhang checks, he confirms that the numbers are indeed correct. Yui then points out that Zhang's mistake almost cost everyone their bonus, so it's only fair that he provides an explanation. Embarrassed, Zhang admits he made a big mistake, but thanks to Brother Liu, the company avoided a major loss. Shaman interjects, saying that although Zhang made an error, no real harm was done. That's when Yui stands up and says Master Shannon doesn't seem to be feeling too well. He places a hand on Shannon's shoulder, shoves him into a chair, and tells him to sit for a moment. Yui adds that he's more curious about why all the company's money is in Shannon's account. Employees shout, saying now it makes sense why their bonuses have been disappearing. Shannon tries to lie, claiming he has no idea where the money went and that he wouldn't even invest in this company if it weren't for President Lin. But Yui just tells him to stop lying. Cornered, Shannon admits he remembers now. It was Zhang who transferred money from his account because he needed it. He insists they just need to talk to Zhang to get the money back. Yui remarks that it's great to see his friend Shannon repenting for his mistakes and exposing the cowards, but Shannon, seething with rage, mutters that he wants to kill this damn guy. Meanwhile, the employees grab their keyboards. Yui tells them they know what to do. Naturally, the manager gets beaten up, with everyone shouting that this is why they always have to do overtime. Our boy then gets a message from the Empress, who, as usual, is starving. That's when he remembers that today is the Lin family banquet. The scene shifts to the Lin family mansion, where a man named Lin Wei is getting ready. He's the brother who previously tried to kill the Empress. A maid approaches him, informing him that the guests have arrived. Then the protagonist and the Empress appear. Yui comments that the place is truly a spectacle. However, she doesn't seem impressed and asks if the Lin family isn't supposed to be more prominent. Yui says that to him, the party seems very luxurious. But she retorts that she doesn't see a single can of Coke around. At that moment, Wei approaches the Empress and says their grandmother was worried she wouldn't attend. She completely ignores him. Confused, Wei asks why she's not speaking and why she's acting so distant toward her brother. Yui steps forward and explains that she hasn't been feeling well since the car accident. Wei asks who he is. The protagonist introduces himself as the president's assistant. Suddenly, Wei offers her a glass of wine and points out that the heads of Pan Industries and Fichu Industries are nearby. He suggests she go entertain them. With that, he leaves. The Empress asks Yui who that man is. He explains that in theory, he's supposed to be her brother, but he's not entirely sure. What he does know is that this guy is under 30 and already the head of the Lin family. The company she owns is just one branch of the family's holdings. The Empress says the place is boring and has an atmosphere she doesn't like. She then looks at the glass of wine and comments that at least it looks good. Before Yui can stop her, she drinks it all. Immediately, she asks if that was alcohol and why it's so strong. Yui explains that modern distillation techniques have improved a lot, so the alcohol is much stronger. She looks a bit disheartened, wishing for a Coke. Yui notices a blonde passing by with a tray and asks if there's any Coke around. She says no because high-end VIPs only drink this kind of cocktail. The two laugh, wondering what kind of bumpkin would want Coke at an event like this. One of them says not to say that. He might be so important if he's attending this event. But the other replies that it's impossible and he's probably just a kid Miss Lin brought along. After all, she's already heard rumors that Lin Maok is expected to marry someone from the Pan family at this banquet. Now Yui understands why the Empress was invited to this. He notices that in the meantime she's been called to a table. A man with purple hair says that the higher a woman climbs, the less she's worth. Another man sitting across from him says that's a harsh thing to say and suggests he drink instead. But the purple-haired man asks if he's wrong, saying a woman should focus on staying beautiful and finding a good husband. The other man asks if he has someone in mind. He replies that he's not very interested after seeing his father's 12th wife run off with his money. However, he mentions that his father is so strong, only 60 years old and ready to have more kids. He tells the Empress that he's always advised his father that low-class women aren't worth it, but someone like her from the Lin family must have blood good for something. He places a hand on her shoulder and asks what she thinks of his offer. Meanwhile, Yui is worried since he knows everyone at this event is influential in the city, but seeing Lin angry, he decides he doesn't care about that. He grabs the idiot's arm and twists it. The man, panicking, asks if Yui knows who he is and demands to be let go. While Lin wonders what he's doing, Yui seizes the chance to shock everyone.